Okay, so how should you study your textbooks? A good way to study your textbooks is to make quizzes for yourself and then answer them. So, this is going to help you a lot because this is a deep level of processing. I think it's stronger, or I know it's stronger if you create your own questions and answer them. But let's say you're short of time. A textbook will usually, at the end of a chapter, have questions and definitions for you to answer. Quiz yourself on that. Quiz friends. My recommendation to you is if you study with 2 or 3 people in the class, each of you guys make 5 questions you think you'll have or see on the exam, and then answer them. Make a key, make sure the answers are correct. You wouldn't want to share the wrong answer and have someone learn the answer incorrectly. So make sure the answers are correct, and then distribute your practice exams amongst each other. That is extraordinarily helpful and will help you to succeed on the next exam. So, what we call when we encode or study information, when we're making information meaningful, we call this elaborative processing. Think about when you tell someone, "Can you elaborate on that topic for me, please?" What you're really telling them is, "Can you tell me more?" So it's more one of the deepest levels of processing that you can try while encoding is making information meaningful. One of these, specifically, one of these types of elaborative processing is the self reference effect. And I would say this is probably the strongest way to encode information into your long term memory store. So when I study, I try to relate things to the people I love the most. So, my family, things I like. I love teaching. So, if I relate it to an experience I've had when teaching, I know that I am going to remember it. I love animals. So, when something is exciting and fun and includes animals, especially dogs, that's something I'll remember longer. Again, anything to do with my family. I'm very close with my grandma, which is why I study aging. Um, Anything to do with music, cello. I love all types of music, and I love studying the brain. So, what I do when I study is I make information in college and in graduate school. Whenever I had something important to study, I would write out a zillion study guides until I didn't have the time. And I would also make my own examples next to whatever I was writing about someone in my family or some kind of music that I liked or whatever it was I found interesting. So I want to review the memory structures important in long-term memory. So this blue guy is the hippocampus. It looks a lot different. This is enlarged to show you where it's at and how it looks. It looks like a seahorse, and this is where explicit memory formation occurs. So it's not coincidence that this purple guy, the amygdala, sits right on top. So the amygdala is important for emotion, and we'll learn in a little bit that emotion is very much associated with our memories. Remember that once you sleep and once long-term memory consolidation happens, the memories move from the hippocampus to the lobe. Well, it can go to the lobe. I don't know why this is moving. It can go to the lobe areas in general, but or it'll go to the cortex in general, but a lot of it will go to the frontal lobes for further processing. To contrast this, implicit memory, remember, in memories that are procedural in nature, they're very much associated with motor movement. And so the cerebellum, this is known as, the translation is little brain. It looks like a little brain at the back of the brainstem. And then the basal ganglia, these are structures important for motor movement. And so there are also structures, again, it's not coincidence that there are also structures important in implicit memory processing. This is definitely something you should know for your exam. So I mentioned that on this slide that the amygdala is right on top of the hippocampus. And it's really important to note that almost all of our memories are emotional in nature, but some are very strongly emotional. So, excitement or stress can trigger hormone production, and this will engage the amygdala and start helping your hippocampus to process memories. So, when you're stressed and excited, this is going to help you to have the memory stick out more. However, just because a memory sticks out more because it is emotional does not mean that you remember it better. If anything, you have holes in your memory because the excitement or the stress is impacting your memory and your memory retrieval. A type of emotional memory that we have is called a flashbulb memory. And these occur after something very emotional has happened. These trigger hormonal changes, and when you rehearse them or when you bring them back into memory, they're not, remember that memory is reconstructed, so they're not often accurate. An example of this, I'll give you some examples right now, but these flashbulb memories typically have very, very strong emotions associated with them. They're very stressful. Now, remember, stress is positive or negative, but they're very stressful either way. And they can strengthen the memory itself. However, the accuracy is not associated in this case with the strength. So, a lot of people have these flashbulb memories for 9/11. This was something that was emotional to many people. And to me, what feels like I have this very accurate memory of the day, it might not be, I will never know. But I remember where I was in seventh grade. I was in Mrs. Erickson's English class, and they canceled school, and my mom came and picked me up, and she was very sad, and it was just a really awful time. And on the news for the next, I don't know how many months, they just showed the Twin Towers going down. So is something that would be a flashbulb memory to me. It's something where I think I have a lot of details about it. I think that my details are accurate, but it's also very strongly emotional to me, and it was emotional to others and very stressful. For me, at the time that 9/11 happened, I was very young. So I also know that my memory was not accurate. So for me, that's not the best example of a flashbulb memory. However, Trump's inauguration is a very strong example of a flashbulb memory to me. I was in Georgia. I saw people eating a lot of Southern food. I remember it was January 2017. It was just a very to me, a lot of emotion, a lot of stress on this day. And so to me, that's a flashbulb memory I have. And those are example of bigger events that people have similar flashbulb memories, but you can have them for personal big events. So something like moving or starting graduate school, having a baby, buying a house. All of those are extraordinarily stressful and involve a lot of emotion and emotional capacity. So these typically stick out in your long-term memory. However, again, I do want to just nail it solid. They're not necessarily accurate, the most accurate. Retrieval cues are aids that help you in retrieving memory. So this is typically certain kind of stimuli. So this can be a song, this could be a picture, which is why when you're working with your older adults, something like a song would be great to play. It'll spark memories for them. Something like a picture would be great to play. The video that you're making in and of itself will be a retrieval cue. And this is very helpful for memories. They help us because once we see something, other associated concepts that we have encoded regarding that material will pop up into our brain as we're trying to retrieve it. So this should look familiar. You guys already have a lot of experience with the semantic network. These are retrieval cues for Coe College. So if I were to say Iowa, somewhere in your brain, Coe College would be activated. Now, this would be different for other people who maybe don't know what Coe College is or aren't from Iowa. that they probably wouldn't think, but they might think of corn or snow or polar vortex and things like that. So this is identical to your semantic network that you created of Code College. And again, this is different based on different people's experiences. It's really important to think of context in terms of memory, and this is where we'll spend quite a bit of time. So you have probably heard of context or state-dependent memory in your intro psych books. There's a famous study that everyone really talks about, and I'll talk about that study right now. But this involves maximizing retrieval when the conditions at encoding and the conditions at test are the same or identical or similar. This is based off the encoding specificity principle. So this is based off of this idea that to maximize retrieval, we need to have conditions similar in ideal ways at encoding or study and at test. And I'll give you that, you might not know what that means, but I'll give you examples right now. So this is the famous study you've probably seen on context-dependent memory, and I forget the authors of the study. But in this study, what they had people do is they gave them a list of words, and they had them either study the list of words on water or on land. And then some of those participants either retrieved those words, recalled those words on study or on land. So on the y-axis, you have percentage of words recalled, and on the x-axis, you have same or different contexts. So here, if you studied on water and retrieved on land, you had a little more than 20% recall. And if you studied on land and retrieved on water, a little more than 20. So these are about even. However, when you study in water and test in water, this goes up significant. In a statistically significant way, and similarly with land and land. When you study on land and retrieve on land, there's almost 40% recall here. This is really important. So what this means is that when you're studying and test taking, these conditions should be similar. So if you're taking a test in a quiet place, Stewart Hall 105 or whatever classroom you're in, you should be studying in a classroom in a quiet place and maybe studying in your seat, because these are going to be helpful retrieval cues when you're actually taking the exam. Okay. I'm going to stop this one.